You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Ciao, everybody. It's another Buzz episode of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast presented by Pinelands Nursery. Sono Fran Chismar.
and I'm Tom Kinezic. And Fran, I think you have something up your sleeve here.
But, you know, and I so badly wanted to do an accent, and I can't. I didn't want to.
I can't either.
No one would have guessed what I was doing anyway. But yeah, we... surprisingly enough, it's no longer, but at one moment in time, we had the number 2 nature podcast in Italy.
Yeah, so we wanted to thank all of our Italian listeners.
How do you say thank you in Italian?
You're
Italian.
I'm half Italian, so I should know this. And I'm just blanking on it right now. I'm sure as soon as we are done, I'll remember. I rember like buonanotte was good night.
Okay, that's good enough.
I went to Italy and I don't remember.
Yeah.
I learned all this stuff and it left. But.
Well, the funny thing is I did a little research, and not just in the last month or 2 months, but in the history of our podcast, we only have a total of 8 listens in Italy.
Yeah.
So, I guess to be the number 2 nature podcast in Italy, you don't have to have that many. Yeah. There's probably not that they're not really listening to nature podcasts, or at least in English.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So
with that, I remember with thank you. So we say grazie to all of our Italian listeners. All, I don't know how many, less than 8 that there are.
So, but we did in Italy beat nature sounds,
which is a big step for us.
That is huge
because we've beaten the sounds of nature.
Yes, which constantly are just taunt us in the top 5. So, but it's been, all kidding aside, it's been a great month for us because we've skyrocketed back up into the top of the Apple Podcast Nature charts, which we're pleased and thankful for. Our episodes with Claudia West and Dr. Doug Tallamy have been extremely well received, better than at any moment in time in the podcast. Oh, yeah. The Facebook group is growing. We keep getting more people for that. We keep getting 5-star reviews. Richard McCoy, thank you for the kind words about the Claudia West episode, and whoever else is leaving the 5-star reviews without saying anything, we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, and going into this little stretch when we had it kind of, I don't want to say secretly planned. We knew what was coming up, but you guys at home didn't necessarily know what we had planned. We figured it would be a big month for us. These are 2 guests that we wanted to have on for a while. We wanted to have Claudia West on like months ago, and it just good for her. She was super, super busy. Even when we recorded with her, she's like, "Hey, I gotta cut this a little short because I have a deadline."
And we had to postpone numerous times together because she was so busy. And even Dr. Tallamy said when he wrote Nature's Best Hope, he didn't think anyone would read it, and it changed his life. We didn't know anyone. We're excited about the episodes. We didn't know if anyone would listen to them or if anyone would care, but you did, and we appreciate that. And even behind the scenes, one of the top magazines in our industry is even decided to do an expose on Pinelands Nursery and kind of focus on the podcast a little bit. So that was a really nice surprise for us.
Oh yeah,
that they noticed and wanted to talk about that. So that I think is going to be in the December issue.
They were trying for December
of NM Pro, Nursery Management Pro. So we'll share that with everyone when that comes out. But we're excited about that. But
which, Fran, you're showing your age here because I think it's just Nursery Management Magazine now.
Is it really?
I don't think it's NM Pro anymore.
Okay, yeah, I am showing my age there, but that's okay. So you want to get into it?
Yeah, we said last episode that we were going to try and keep it short, and
we're not.
It ended up being our longest buzz ever. So we're not even going to make any promises now. So.
No, it's going to be.
It's going to be what it is.
I have a feeling this is going to be a long episode, but that's okay. I don't think anyone has been complaining about our buzz episode, so we're thrilled about that.
I even got a rave review from my wife. She said that the buzz episodes were her favorite episode, and which was a little surprising. I thought she'd get tired enough of hearing me at home, but
isn't that always surprising? Like it always amazes me when my fiance will say she listened to the podcast. I'm like, really? You have to listen to me all the time.
You listen to me all the time at home, and now you're listening to me when I'm not home too.
That's impressive. That's a great compliment.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's a great compliment. So I guess we should kind of keep it somewhat on topic. Mm-hmm. Although, since I didn't get to discuss it last time, can I say what I'm binging on Netflix?
Oh yeah,
since
go ahead.
I got curtailed and the Dr. Doug Tallamy. Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun. Not child appropriate at all. Do not let your kids watch it. It's sketch comedy from a troupe, Auntie Donna from Australia. It's absurd. Totally. I don't even know how to explain it.
I think the first time you described, I still haven't watched it yet. But the first time you described it to me, it was like Pee-wee's Playhouse, but on acid.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's a mixture of like the Monkees and Monty Python and Pee-wee Herman.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, but you watch it. Like sometimes it's almost too much and too over the top, and it changes so fast that you can't keep up. But I've been watched the whole thing. The episodes are only 15 to 18 minutes long. They're not.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we're gonna have to check it out. I was planning to this weekend, and we have a kid now. There's no sense of time anymore. It's basically I wake up, take care of him, come to work, go home, clean up, take more care. Then all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock, and I'm like, I got to start over again tomorrow. I got to go to sleep sometime.
I get it. You know, it's funny now that my kids are older and they're more closer to adults and they have a lot of their own things that they're doing. You start finding yourself with so much time. Mm-hmm. Like it's the exact opposite. It's you're running, and then someone hits it in reverse, and you're like, oh, what do I do? Yeah, it's like a weird thing.
And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about that because it's awesome.
No,
it is like
that's just the
best
way it is.
Experience of my life, and it's like, yeah, you're waking up early, but it's time. Like we'll hear some cries and my wife says, do you want me to get him? I'm like, no, this is like my time. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 or whatever time he wakes up. That's my time to kind of go and get him and soothe him and bond with him a little bit. Because other than that, if it's mom's time, any other time of the day is mom's time, and I'm kind of kicked out.
And let's be honest, you're both sleep deprived. Yep. There's so many factors at play that it's difficult. Even when you have the time, all you can think about sometimes is relaxing.
But even when I talk to friends, it's like, man, it sounds like when I'm explaining this whole process, it sounds like it's terrible, but it's really not. I'm sure there's cases where it is not as much fun as I'm having with it, but. No, I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Sometimes, at the time that you're dealing with it, you may not realize how much fun it is. Yeah. In retrospect, sometimes you realize how good it is. Yeah. But it's good that you have that perspective, that you're enjoying it as you can. Not everyone can put themselves in that frame of mind. Yep. And sometimes cases are a little more extreme, too. So.
But with that, let's get into not just an episode of The Buzz, but the Thanksgiving special episode of The Buzz.
Very true, very true. Right. So let's start it with an old favorite first.
Yes. Okay.
It's hot.
It still makes me laugh every time. So I want to preface. Would you like to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you go first?
I'll go first. And this is not something I've actually seen. It's just I haven't seen it in person right this year, but I am seeing it, especially on social media. And then Dr. Doug Tallamy alluded to it with his favorite plant of the moment. Our favorite native plant of the moment, and that's witch hazel. And witch hazel's blooming right now. I'm seeing a lot of pictures from I don't want to say from all over the country, but all over the area of people who are seeing their witch hazel starting to come into bloom.
And it's important to mention we're talking about native witch hazel because there are hybrids that don't bloom until February, like when you see Arnold's Promise and things like that. That's a hybrid. That's not necessarily your native. So the native. The Hamamelis virginiana is blooming right now for us locally in the Northeast. So no, that's a great choice, and it's a bonus that Dr. Tallamy.
Yeah, I'm just kind of playing off of what he's.
So I want to preface mine because when I picked mine, it was in like full fall glory, and now the last storm defoliated it already. Like it's defoliated before I even got a chance to talk about it.
we have two of these in our front yard, and they went from every leaf was on the tree to no leaves were on the tree except for like a couple that were barely hanging on. It was very quick.
And typically they hold a little bit longer. They defoliate a little earlier. But red oak, it's a great, as Doug Tallamy mentioned, that the benefits of oaks with Lepidoptera, but also the fall color, that reddish bronze tint to that glossy leaf is pretty spectacular, and it really stands out. More so than other oaks, in my opinion. So, and that's very prevalent here in New Jersey. You could see it anywhere in a lot of the forests. So.
It's also a plant that's going to have a callback later on in this episode. So
yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, so I'm going to let you take the lead.
Yeah. So this was one of the things when we started the Buzz was we want to have not necessarily top 10 lists, but lists of things relative to native plants, and being that it's almost Thanksgiving, we wanted to have a Thanksgiving theme to this. So it was really probably native plants that were at the first Thanksgiving.
Which is hard to. There's not a whole lot of documentation.
Yeah, there really is very, very little documentation. In fact, I'll say this first. What we see on today's Thanksgiving table is wildly different than what they had. There's a little bit of crossover, but even the ingredients that you see crossover in, they're in much different states than they would have been back then.
Yeah, totally.
And doing a lot of the research for this, there's so many things that I hadn't thought of about. We see the pictures of the first Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims and the Native Americans and sitting down at a table and sharing a meal as like a thank you for the Native Americans helping them through that first year. But there was things that just, I don't know, they stick in your mind, like the turkey. Everyone thinks they had a turkey, but really, I think one of the only documented foods that they had at that first Thanksgiving was venison, was deer, and it was recorded that the Native American elders coming to this meal brought 5 deer with them to be part of the meal, and it was actually a multi-day thing. Yeah, which that sounds good to me.
I would love that. Can we go back to that? Yeah. Like first, we have to have off all of those days. I would totally just eat for. Can we make it 5 days? Let's say 3. Yeah. Okay, I'm being greedy. We'll do 3 days.
Good. That way you have 1 day to recover before coming back.
But I don't want it to be Black Friday. I would like it to be like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then have a 3-day weekend to
now
recover.
You're asking a little bit too much.
If you're gonna ask big.
But yeah, there's a lot of people. Wild turkey was in the area, so it's you can probably assume that might have been part of the meal. Waterfowl would have been part of the meal. Yeah. You forget that they're right on the coast, so fish and probably more specifically shellfish like clams and oysters would be part of that meal. And it's important to remember that like oysters have a lot of and clams have a lot of benefit today in cleaning the water. And there's a lot of great work happening in the Chesapeake Bay and the Delaware Bay, even in like the Raritan Bay and the New York Harbor. In those areas, there's a lot of great work being done with shellfish, specifically oysters, on helping to clean some waterways that are considered incredibly dirty.
Yeah, and to bring back that population, it's very well documented, the decline of oysters in the Northeast, and also the decline in the size of the oyster that's found. Yeah.
So while they're not a native plant, there's something being in the native plant community, especially along the coast, we kind of see, I don't want to say go hand in hand, but they're pretty closely related. So
yeah. So and you wanted to debunk one of the myths about like pumpkin pie.
Yeah. So that was another thing, is you probably didn't find many pies or desserts, at least sweet ones, because they had recorded that actually a year prior, while they were still staying on the Mayflower when most of the people were on the Mayflower before coming on the land, they'd ran out of sugar already. So there was no real way to make those sweet desserts. They probably didn't have much wheat flour, since this is a new land. They didn't. Yeah. Wheat was from originally from like Mesopotamia area, the cradle of civilization. Yeah. So it was throughout Europe and Asia, but was new in North America. They didn't have wheat growing here to make wheat flour. So you figure there's not pie crust if that's the case. So you're using different things. And one thing that was noticeably absent that I hadn't really thought of until I started doing some research was honey.
Yeah, makes total sense.
European honeybees, which we've talked a lot about it on this podcast, but a little bit with Doug Tallamy as well. Well, they're a non-native species. It's a European honeybee. and they hadn't been brought to North America yet. So even if you're thinking, oh, well, they don't have sugar, they could use honey. Well,
no,
that wasn't here yet. So really the only sweetener that they had available was tree syrups. So maple syrup, birch syrup, those kind of things they could harvest and use that as a sweetener. But it wasn't, they definitely didn't have as much sweet stuff as we do today.
If you've ever made birch syrup, the amount that you have to drain, I'm sure birch were more prevalent at that point, but just to convert that to syrup, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So in looking back, some of the documentation of what they thought that was native that might have been there, like history.com figures that you have to at least account for fruits that were indigenous to the region. Blueberries should have been there, plums, grapes, gooseberries, raspberries, of course, cranberry.
Yeah. And again, that's another ingredient that would have been in a much different state than how we envision it. You're not open with a can opener and getting out that purplish reddish log. It was actual berry, which is very common in where we are in New Jersey and Massachusetts, and even out in the Midwest a little bit. But it wouldn't have been sweetened. And have you ever had like fresh cranberries before?
No, I haven't. And considering that New Jersey is one of the top 2 producers of cranberries in the world, I've never had fresh cranberries.
Yeah, they're very tart. They're not sweet like you think of when you're drinking cranberry juice or having definitely not cranberry sauce. But I remember when I was in college, I was in a wetland ecology class, and a lot of that class, our labs, we would go out into wetlands, and I don't remember where we were, but I think it was a fen somewhere in upstate New York, and we were doing plant surveys and peat surveys and doing all this cool stuff, and someone found like a stand of native cranberries in this fen, and then we probably spent half the lab just picking cranberries. And the next lab, whoever went home with all the cranberries actually made cranberry muffins out of them.
Oh, that's awesome!
Ate way more than I should have.
When back in September when we kayaked through Pinelands Adventure, we spotted cranberry growing along the banks, but they were in places that we just couldn't really get to. I so badly wanted to just hop out of the kayak and grab some, but they eluded me, so that didn't hit my palate, unfortunately. But one thing that the other thing that was probably present are our local nuts and acorns. I wonder, curious, like if there were even documented cases of nut allergies back then.
I don't know. I would doubt it.
I would doubt it too. But you have to figure, and nuts were probably a lot more prevalent then than they are today, because you don't really have chestnuts anymore. And chestnuts were, the majority of the forests in that region at that point. Beech nuts, black walnuts, butternuts, hazelnuts, hickory nuts. They were most often consumed by the woodland people, according to woodlandindian.edu. Mm-hmm.
And then some of the other plants that were probably either like blooming around that time or able to be used at that time, you had the sumacs, especially like Rus typhina was one where they actually make a drink out of it. I mentioned in the last episode of The Buzz making a drink out of it and using it as a spice, which I found out was actually a Middle Eastern Rus that they used, but they said that the native ones you could do it and actually had a similar flavor profile. Sassafras, which is originally used to make root beer.
Root beer, yeah, because birch beer.
Birch beer is the same thing.
Beer,
is birch beer a thing outside of this area?
I don't know if it is. Like birch beer to me, like I always think of like central to western Pennsylvania, or New Jersey. I don't really think of it out. I don't know if it is a thing outside of this area.
I know, like especially where we are, it's you go to get a tomato pie instead of a pizza. Yeah. You're getting a tomato pie and birch beer.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I guess for our listeners that are outside of Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, you might not have a clue what we're talking about when it comes to birch beer. But birch beer is very similar to root beer.
To me, I can't. If you were to have me taste both, I don't know that I could pick out what's what.
Well, I could pick them
Could
out.
You?
Yeah.
I don't think I could.
There's subtle differences. Birch beer has more complexity to the flavor, to me.
All right.
But another thing was a Jerusalem artichoke, which is a helianthus. There's some wild onions. There's multiple varieties of wild onions they might have used. Cattails, there's multiple parts that are edible.
Oh, yeah.
And would have been able to be harvested at that time. And then rose hips or something else they might have used. No. And then there's some other stuff that we don't necessarily think of as native plants, like corn or maize, and that's not what we see today. Definitely not sweet corn, and that was along with the acorns. That was what they made their flour out of to make different breads and those kind of things. Squashes were native to North America. And both the maize and the squashes are actually, I guess, originally came from like the south area of the country and actually closer to Mexico. And it was just how people traveled and traded. That's how they made their way to the East Coast.
Nice.
And yeah,
I think that's so. That try to incorporate some of those into your Thanksgiving meal.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't listened to this after Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
but you know, you can kind of feel like you're a little closer to home if you can incorporate.
Yeah,
some of those
there's
things.
actually one of the websites I was on. I forget which one it was. Had actually a bunch of recipes of stuff, and one of them was like cranberries and wild rice. And which wild rice was another thing that was native to like the northern Midwest, and I'm sure spread through trading and all that. And but there were some interesting recipes on there of what would have actually been, might have been there, and different stews, and it didn't look like our Thanksgiving Day for sure.
I'll check that out though. So to my dismay, we're going to move on to the next topic. Let me cue it.
You can get with this, or you can get with that.
So we have to announce the results of the last Buzz episode when we premiered this or that. So Tom and I each debuted an article.
And I've got a big smile on my face because I cleaned up. We were expecting a couple more votes. I was a little dismayed that I only got 10 votes, but I was very happy that my 10 votes crushed your 4 votes.
You only got 10 votes, but I only got 4 votes. That was a lot of people didn't vote on this one. I don't know that it would have changed the outcome had more people voted. I have a feeling that your article was a strong contender. So congratulations.
Thank you
won.
very much.
You won.
You're very humble.
I've had time to get over it. I was a little bitter at first, because you had a relative
rig the vote.
Yeah, I voted for myself.
You voted for yourself, so then I voted for myself. But then you were calling for more votes, and
you had a family member that
you
voted.
were letting pollsters watch.
I'm discounting votes because they were family members. And I'm like, I don't think that family member read my article. I think they only read yours, But then after a while,
you wanted them to stop the count and then recount elsewhere.
I kept trying to promote it, and then, to my dismay,
at least you're not claiming to have won still.
No, I didn't. So, but Tom is the winner, and
so I'm up 1-0.
And there is a winner because.
And of course, the choice is yours.
Oh, shoot. I hit the wrong one. Sorry.
That's okay.
Man, so I lost and I messed up. There is a winner because...
There can be only one.
There can be only one, and Tom was the winner. So we do have another round. As the winner, because we flipped last time, you can choose to read first or defer.
Fran, I'm going to let you go first so I know how much I need to pump up this article.
All right, I have an article, but again, maybe I would have a better chance at winning if I came better prepared. Because
that would be a strong start.
Because I have nothing. I have the article in front of me, but I didn't write any notes, or I should probably better prepare. It would probably help me. But so the title of my article is "One Tasmanian's 54-Year Obsession to Catalog All of the World's Edible Plants to End Malnutrition." So it's more on a global level. So this is Bruce French, who has cataloged in the last 54 years over 31,000 edible plants globally. And it kind of started for him. He was teaching agriculture in New Guinea, and his students were really asking about native plants for them that they could eat, that they could grow. And he kind of took it. So it wasn't just for the sake of science. It was for the sake of teaching people what they have at their
just available to them.
What's available for them to sustain themselves, to be self-dependent and not, depend on imports or anything like or someone else, something that you can get your hands on and grow yourself locally. And they did make a database that's available online, and I'm trying to remember. It's called Food Plant Solutions. Agronomist Buzz Green helped found it to promote Mr. French's database. So, which I think is very admirable. So it's relevant here, but it's relevant everywhere. So it's just what can you do to end hunger, and we often overlook native plants. I know one of our listeners has been talking more. It was Darren talking more about doing edibles in the Pacific Northwest of what he can do in his own property that he can self-sustain. And I think this is a great resource in the same vein. So I felt that it was a good enough message to use as my article.
And it keeps it on theme with the whole Thanksgiving thing with the edible plants. That's what we were just talking about before.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
and I know a lot of people and their highlights at Thanksgiving tend to be meat based, but Thanksgiving wouldn't be Thanksgiving without all the plants that made it possible. Exactly.
So I just thought it was very fitting, and it was great. That's a very good feel-good story, I thought.
Yeah.
That's it, for good reasons, is a feel-good story.
Yeah. So mine was published through the Ecological Landscape Alliance.
Okay.
And I guess it's more of an opinion piece, but it is titled "An Argument for Dropping Time and Place When Determining Native Ranges."
I actually saw this article.
Yeah.
I thought about this.
And basically what the author's Dan Wilder, and his whole argument is that the time and place for native ranges of plants kind of exclude the ecological benefit of them. And then we'll think about some of the things we talked about before with like maize and Jerusalem artichoke, really not native to that area of Massachusetts, but were being used and had some ecological benefit, not just to the humans, but to other animals and insects that were in that area. So he was making a call to drop that from because I like to claim that there is a hard and fast definition to what's a native plant, what's not. You can find numerous definitions of what a native plant is. Yeah. Everyone kind of has their own little tweak, and while, like I said, I think that this is the actual definition. This was recognized by USDA and all these places, so that's what I'm going with. There's still people who argue with that, and
and I can see that point. If you think about it from this perspective, that Dr. Sala, and I can't remember the name of the scientist that did the study, but when he was working with single-cell organisms to determine predator-prey, and that one of the things that predators needed was space to roam, to go to where the prey is easy. Yeah. So you can easily apply that to plants. Like for us, where we're located we're in the coastal plain, and then the next plain over to us is Piedmont. There's a transition area. It's not like there's a hard line, because you have plants that are available in both Piedmont and coastal plain, but there's a transition. It's not a hard line where these plants stop growing here and then the next zone is here. They kind of vary and they move, and we've talked about climate change and things like sugar maple moving further north where the climate better suits them. Plants adapt and move on their own. We tend to think of them as stationary and put them in a box, but they're going to adapt the best ways they can based on their changes.
Oh, yeah. And so he goes on and talks about Agastache feniculum and Monarda didyma, which are two awesome plants, but not native, and he's based out of Massachusetts, not native to New England, or maybe they are on the fringe, but that doesn't mean they don't have ecological benefit in New England, and it's something that is attractive, can be commonly found in landscapes already, and is a benefit to a lot of pollinators and other insects and wildlife as well. So, but they wouldn't be considered native under the current widely recognized definition, which I recognize. And I agree with that. Yeah. I think that's a good point.
I do too.
Where he loses me a little bit is because he says that it doesn't account for human interactions, which I guess I should step back and say my definition of what a native plant is and what USDA basically outlines is it's what was here before European contact.
Yeah.
Or I guess European settlement. I shouldn't say contact because that's 200 years previous. And why I like that definition is because that's when things started to change much, much quickly and from much further areas.
Yes.
You think about, I think we kind of look through rose-colored glasses about human migration over time. Take the Bering Land Bridge, for example.
Yeah.
we kind of think that you had people in Russia who said, hey, we want to go over there, and a week later they were on the other side. This was really a process that took hundreds of years through settlements and exploration. It wasn't something where, like, you or I would say, hey, we want to go to California, we get on a plane, fly across, or even if we walked across without stopping, we have the luxury of stopping at a McDonald's or going to the bathroom someplace, or where in their situation there was nothing along that route. You had to make a camp, and then it was the next group would say, okay, we want to push a little bit further.
Yeah, it wasn't like they crossed the bridge and went, let's go to Mexico.
Yeah.
No,
they didn't know what was in front of them.
Or the predators that they would find at that time frame.
So even though they were definitely bringing plants with them, that was would be just what you would do. You'd say, well, I know this grows, it produces food, I'm going to bring it with me. It was taking still decades to centuries to millennium for those plants to actually travel.
Yeah.
And even if you look even more in continental North America, well, you brought up pawpaws on a past episode, and they really, if you look at a map, from the book we were referencing, it showed them being native along the Delaware River. If you look at a map, the range of pawpaws really tends to follow rivers.
Yeah.
One explanation of that is that Native Americans knew it was a food source and brought it with them, and their main travel routes were often rivers and just planted along the way. So it's probably a more southern species, but as native groups traveled north, they just brought it with them.
And then they've slowly disappeared.
So, but that took a long time to do. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to be in Louisiana and walk to Minnesota and just plant like Johnny Pawpaw.
Yeah,
just planting pawpaws along the way everywhere I go. It took probably decades for that to actually matriculate.
Yeah.
Now you talk with European settlement, well, you have stuff that was now thousands of miles away on American soil within a couple months.
Yeah.
And now you're constantly just bringing more over. Like I kind of mentioned before, and now you look at today, we have numerous flights going to all parts of the world multiple times a day. Probably there's hundreds of flights that are going internationally, back and forth, and now you compound that with shipping and all kinds of stuff. It's no wonder that there's more plants and more invasive insects and just other insects that aren't invasive just coming into our shores and going out every day. So that's why I like that. I'm getting way off here, but that's why I like that European contact, because that's when it really sped up fast.
That goes back. I was going to say, so you look at catalpa. Or actually, not catalpa. What's the plant I'm thinking of? Royal Empress tree, Polonia, which you can find all up and down the Delaware River in Philadelphia, and mature trees, and you think, oh, these have to be native here. They're not. That's the hulls of the seed is what they used for packaging to come from Asia to the United States via boat. So all that packaging, there was seed in it, and boom, there you go. I mean, there's impacts going back for hundreds and hundreds of years. So
the last thing I'll bring up from this, maybe the last thing, and this is actually a quote from Dr. Doug Tallamy and Rich Stark's first book, The Living Landscape, and they define native as a plant or animal that has evolved in a given place over a period of time sufficient to develop complex and essential relationships with the physical environment and other organisms in a given ecological community. Which actually wraps up pretty nice. And the author goes on and says, well, that kind of rules out purple loosestrife, because while it does produce some pollen, it's not complex, or it's not a complex or essential relationship. Yeah. Where there's other things, he writes, bald cypress does form a complex and essential relationship, even though it might not have been native to New England, it was native further south.
Yeah.
So he brings up a lot of good points.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm ready to give way. Maybe that time, or maybe that place portion I can give up a little bit on, but the time part I'm pretty hard on, because that's when it really started to rapidly change.
You don't have to agree with all of it. Yeah. You just have to ask the right questions.
But what I really liked about it most is it challenges our existing thoughts. And that's something we always have to do in every aspect of our life, but especially with native plants. We constantly have to challenge how we think about things, and we've talked about honeybees again in this episode, but ad nauseum a lot of times. And honeybees are really what launched a lot of this pollinator movement and saving pollinators. And now it's coming out, maybe they aren't as beneficial to, they definitely aren't beneficial to the native plants, and native bee populations, but it's still helping by raising awareness.
Yes.
Even though they might not be the best fit for that. So I forget exactly where I was going at that point.
That's all right. I think I find myself making a better argument for your article than my own.
What I was trying to say is we even though, so 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we loved honeybees. Everyone loved honeybees. They thought they were great. As we found out more, it's okay to reanalyze your stand.
Yeah.
It's one of the lines I love that I hear every once in a while is, I used to poop my pants when I was young, but I changed. It's so it's okay to change your opinion on things when you're presented with new information.
Good information, good facts and science. So totally. So we gave you 2 good articles. We do encourage everyone to vote. More than 14 votes. Actually 12 votes, because Tom and I both voted for ourselves. So
and my mom voted for me.
Yeah, so more than 11 votes. Like, please vote so we can keep this going. If we don't get the votes, honestly, we're not going to keep doing it, because if you don't have interest in it, then it doesn't make sense to keep beating it. So
a vote for our articles is a vote for us to keep doing this.
Yes.
That's one way to look at it.
So if you like the segment, vote. If you don't like the segment, don't vote. But that just tells us what you want. But anyway, we'll wrap it up with,
And of course, the choice is yours.
all right. So, we do have a listener question. Someone did call in with a question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
When I'm looking at the soundboard, I realized I was going to give you a drum roll before you announced the winner. I was going to ask you if you wanted a drum roll, but I forgot.
That's okay.
You want it now?
No, I'm okay.
We'll save it for the next one.
Maybe you'll be the winner next time.
And we'll be like, and the drum roll, please. All right. So we did get a question on the question and answer line, and we're going to play that, and then hopefully we can give a good answer for that question. I'm still waiting for a question that I can't answer, but at least
I'm sure there's
tons, but at least we'll find who knows the answer for that. Like the last one that someone had the question, I asked our propagator, because I didn't know the answer. So even if we don't know the answers, we'll get the right answer. But so the question is,
hi, my name is Carol, and my question is, I am redeveloping a bank. It's a pretty steep bank. It's a pretty high bank, and I'm looking for native plants that I can plant on that bank that will give me color and pollinator interest throughout the seasons, and I'm just wondering, and hold the bank, and I'm wondering if you can give me some advice for that.
Now, I listened in advance and cut out the phone number this time,
that's smart.
I didn't have to panic
and that's for future callers. You don't have to. We know what your number is.
There's caller ID.
It gives us caller ID.
There's caller ID, so you don't have to leave your number. We do see it. So, but I did listen this time and cut the number out. So I am going to assume that the bank is dry. That's my most banks are dry, not exclusively, but I'm going to assume that. So you need to start with a good foundation. Even though you do want good flowering things, you want to get something that's deep rooted. As opposed to the last buzz when we were talking about things for a septic field. You want it shallow root. This time you want something deep rooted, something that's going to hold. So start with a good base to stabilize your bank. Little blue stem and broom sedge, both 2 to 3 foot tall, very striking. We'll start a very good foundation to stop erosion and hold that bank. So if you're rebuilding that bank first, and if you need to regrade, we recommend using something like a core log or a silt sock at the toe of that slope, and you want to plant in those because they are biodegradable, so they will disappear over time. So if you're using that product, you need to plant to help hold that bank or slope. And you can use that with coordination with like a core mat. For a slope, I would say core mat 400 or something like a C2, but it's going to depend. If you're using wildflower seed, you're going to have to do like a core mat 400. Or I'm trying to think what else. No, that's probably my. I would probably. You need something strong because you need it that's going to give you longevity and the strength to hold that
until
that
the vegetation can really take foot.
Yeah.
So on the flower side of things, and this is, again, assuming that it's a drier site, and talk about two things that defy place to start out. You have purple coneflower and black-eyed Susans.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know about the black-eyed Susans, Rudbeckia hirta.
Yeah.
That's actually more of a Midwestern species. Purple coneflower, definitely more of a Midwestern species.
That's an introduced native to here, but, but survives well. Yeah,
survives well, has a lot of ecological function, and it's has, I would think, complex relationships with the excuse me, with the animals and insects that in this area. Another one is lanceleaf tickseed. You have a lot of the bee bombs.
Yeah.
Monarda Fishelos is one that I like a lot because it doesn't get too tall, but it's big enough and it can spread a little bit. Joe pies are always good.
Yeah.
So they're some of my favorites for especially pollinator plantings. And then Blazing Star is another good one.
And the things you just mentioned, extremely great pollinator plants as well. So you're holding your bank or your slope, but you're doing a ton of great pollinator work too. Plus you're getting a nice diverse range of bloom color and bloom time. Yep. So I think that answers that one.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to even mention this, but we do have one other call.
Yeah, which you'd alluded to me previously. I'm at a
debated.
point where on our show notes it says, "Tom, do not read the next page."
Because
I'm going down. And I don't know.
I wasn't sure that I even wanted to bring this up. So, and this has a backstory to it, unfortunately. So,
am I allowed to scroll down more now? Or
you can scroll down.
Okay.
So, at the last place that I worked, I had a customer that was in the industry because we're wholesale to the trade, much like Pinelands Nursery. But one of their employees got my extension and really had nothing to do with the industry. They were more on the financial side. But they would constantly call me and pick my brain. And I guess the polite way to say it was they needed a lot of hand-holding. And it was very difficult sometimes. So when I came to Pinelands Nursery, I was very happy thinking I would not have to deal with this person again. But because of the success of the podcast, they found me. So they called and left a question, and I'm thinking I wasn't going to play it because I didn't want to encourage him, but I'm thinking that he had a lot of good points, and we need to correct some of his assumptions that would be valuable to our listeners. Is he going
to appreciate how you just spoke about him on here?
I don't really care. I don't really care. But with enough said, I'm going to play his message.
Hi, hello. Am I on the air now? I was calling for Fran and John, the plant men, and I have a horticultural question, if you will. Now, men, you were speaking at length about the natives and the invasion species, and I would like to talk about a topic of mutual interest about, I think about a year ago, I planted a plant for some birds, and it's called the berberis. And I planted one plant, the Thunbergii. I thought I might get a couple of birds to come by and fly around it, and I could look at them and perhaps, have a conversation. But wouldn't you know it, Fran, Pam, whoever, the berberis took off like I was cooking hotcakes. And I think that's what you men were describing as the invasion species. Now, I have hundreds of birds now, and they're going crazy on berberis. And men, may I tell you this in confidence? I know this is a family show, but I have a deck outside my kitchen where I like to sit and drink coffee. I like the Starbucks. I like the French roast. It reminds me of when I went to Europe, and I couldn't get a single sticking cup of coffee in the entire country of Europe. But anyway, I have to rename my deck the poop deck, right? Because these birds are creating extensive reparations to the deck area, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. So what I want to know, my topic of inquiry, is when I get my landscaper, Dennis Craig, to remove the berberis, the Thunbergii, what should he replace it with? I want some birds, sure, okay, fine. But they should stay about 4 feet away from my deck. Do you make some kind of a native plant with a force field, like a shield of science that goes up into the heavens and acts as some type of a shield or a barrier? Because I think that would be terrific. Thank you, men. I need your help. Something awful. Okay, I'll wait for the 7-second delay. Okay, thank you. My name is Saul. Saul Rosenberg. Thank you very much. I'm in New Jersey. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. For those of you considering a career in sales, I'll just leave you with that.
I did like that he mentioned it's a family show because we work really hard to
keep it clean.
Yeah, keep it clean.
We really do.
And it is a family show.
It is a family show. So I wasn't going to encourage Saul, but I figure he had some really good points. One, his first choice was an invasive, not invasion species, but an invasive species. And that's something that we talk about with so many of our guests, especially Doug Tallamy in the last one, that there has to be some kind of education. You know, the end consumer needs to be educated that these plants aren't good. Yeah, sure, they have a red leaf and they're striking and maybe they're hardy and urban tolerant, but they're not necessarily great for the environment. They're very invasive. So the fact that you had a bad experience with that plant is kind of good because it made you ask the question of what to plant. So the other thing too is when you're planting native plants, and we're going to promote native plants because that's what we do, if you're creating the proper habitat for birds on your property, you won't necessarily have them on your deck. So if you have the right habitat and you're planting maybe 10, 20 feet away, they're going to stay where the habitat is great for them. So we kind of highlighted some of the best choices that you could use for plants. So it's we could start off with elderberry, and we sing the praises of elderberry all the time. You get the berries, and the plant also hosts 40 Lepidoptera species, plus the human uses. So the birds like the berries, we like the berries. Tom has made fritters from the flowers. There's a lot of great benefits for that. So I thought that would be a good one to start with.
Yeah, and then you have high bush blueberry, which looks like another thing that looks awesome right now. That would have been a good plant for that's hot.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Just because it gets like that fire red, but also great for birds because it produces like a berry that humans also like as well.
Yeah, arrowwood viburnum, maybe not as flashy as some of these other species, but the berries are great for fall migrant birds and nesting. Catbirds, mockingbirds, cardinals all like arrowwood viburnum for nesting. So that's a great choice for habitat and for food source.
Yeah. Winterberry Holly is another one where it hosts, it has the berries and nesting opportunities, but also hosts 30 Lepidoptera species as well.
That's wonderful. Plus the berries, when they're in full glory,
it's ornamental for the winter too.
Oh, totally. So. And then chokeberry, and that's important. You know, it has the name chokeberry because it's not necessarily the favorite berry for birds or wildlife, but they will eat them when everything else has been depleted. So it's a good late season. You're kind of ensuring food for them as the season goes out. So it's a good choice. So plant all of them. Don't just pick one. Plant them all. You'll create a good bird habitat. You can have a good conversation with them and view them from afar from your deck without any extensive reparations.
Yeah, and you'll keep it as a family-friendly show.
Yes, I appreciate that. So I don't know if that's going to encourage Saul to call more now that we played him on air, and I find in my experience it's definitely going to encourage him.
Yeah, but that was okay. I could take, if it's in small increments like that's fine with me.
Yeah. It ended up being a good call.
I do think we should start calling ourselves the Plantsman.
That
name's probably taken. Actually, I know it's taken.
It's taken. So, all right. So I told you I had a surprise for you. So it's a little off topic, but not. So I saw online that an advertisement for these cards called pod decks. It's a podcaster, Travis Brown, that came out with these. So, and each deck has different intended use. So I bought a couple. So one is the interview deck, which you can just take a random question to ask. They're thoughtful and different type of questions. So I'm thinking next time we have a guest on that we know. Yeah. Because it's going to be off topic because it's not going to deal with plants. But maybe we can turn it into a plant question, but maybe when we start having people in, we can let them pick a card out of the deck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we all have to answer it. But the other one is the episode deck. Now, I'm not sure if it's meant to be questions to start an episode or provoke an episode, or if it's something to do in an episode. So you can see this pack is unopened. I thought we could open one and pick one.
Yeah.
And see what
you
it's
need
telling.
like a knife or something?
Maybe. I'm having
maybe
some
scissors.
Let me try this.
Scissors are hard to come by in this office.
They are. There's a pair right in front of me, but I think as I bite it open.
Yeah.
Let me see here. All right, I got it. So
I will say that I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I wonder how many people buy these. Like, they're starting a podcast and get this stuff to really for inspiration.
I thought it was a great idea because maybe if we hit a point where we can't, we have so many ideas. I don't know how we're going to get to them all. But it wouldn't hurt to just incorporate a little bit of uncertainty into it, just not knowing what's going to happen, be a little uncomfortable and see what happens. So here, I'm going to hand these to you if you want to pick one out and read it.
Oh man, this is going to be tough.
All right, I got it.
All right.
Let's see what it says. Pick
We've
one
transferred the deck.
But so listen, so I'm thinking if it's not something we can do here now, maybe we can incorporate it somehow into the next episode of The Buzz.
All right, I'm shuffling.
All right.
I wonder if I can get a good sound on here.
I will say, if anyone else is doing a podcast and is interested, the customer service was incredible. Plus, there's an app that goes along with it, and even if you don't have the physical cards in front of you, you unlock them in the app, so you can still access them, and it will randomly pick them.
All right, I'm going to put the microphone down next to the cards as I shuffle and see.
Oh, you can hear that.
Okay.
All right.
So everyone knows that they're
random.
Adequately shuffled
it's
now.
Random.
I can do a bridge.
Nice.
And I'm going to pick one out of the middle.
All right.
Let's see.
What's it say?
What I learned about myself this quarter.
Oh, you want to do that?
This is one we could do now.
Yeah, we could do that now. I think that's an interesting, introspective question. And that's not even the interview deck. That's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fran, I'm going to let you go first.
All right. I had to think about it for a second, but I think I got, this year has been really challenging for everyone. Not, I think anyone could say 2020 from start to finish has been really challenging. Started off incredible for me with getting engaged just a couple days into the new year, and then it was very challenging from that point forward. I'm thankful that all my family and friends and coworkers have been safe, and that's one thing to be thankful for, to kind of bookend it. But the one thing I learned about myself was from this podcast, I want to say just it kind of reinvigorated what I do for a living. And we've mentioned this on past podcasts that it's real easy to get caught in just like a cycle, because it's a job. You're doing good, but it's also you're doing it for a living. And I learned how much I love this industry and what I do. I kind of knew, but it kind of COVID reinvigorated my love for nature and connecting with nature more, and actually spent this past weekend in a tent, like kind of just enjoying in the backyard. Not even like we didn't even go anywhere. We just pitched a tent in the backyard, and I find myself more refocused and regenerated towards this. And sometimes it takes extreme cases to get you to focus on that kind of stuff. So I think personally, just it made me re-solidified my love for doing this, because like anything else, there's people that love making music or love making art that sometimes becomes tedious, and it's it kind of made me thankful. This podcast really helped, and it's how much I didn't know. It's very humbling, and how much there is to learn still. I think for me, that's my biggest takeaway.
From the first one is how much less sleep I actually need to operate on a day-to-day basis. That's been. If I would have thought, I used to actually sleep quite a bit less.
Yeah.
And then when I got married, we just, I don't know. I guess with age, you just start going to bed earlier, and staying up or you don't stay up as late nearly as often.
Yeah.
If I made it to midnight, which was maybe probably once every quarter
Wow.
after I got married, that was like a very, very rare thing. And I was like hurt. It didn't matter if I drank or not. I would hurt the next day. So that's one part is like, man, you really don't need to sleep as much. And yeah, this is really where it comes in that my wife and I are a really good team. When we see the other ones starting to struggle because they've been up 3 or 4 times at night, which doesn't happen much anymore. But even if you're up a couple times at night, like if I was doing it, she'll volunteer, hey, I'll take the next night. Or if she's been really struggling during the day, I say, hey, let you go take care of yourself. Let me take over for a little bit. So we've been really good that way. But the other thing I've learned also, and this is more for this year, but also revolves around the podcast, is how little I actually knew about the whole function of native plants and all the different facets that I went through. I used to, but I plan on going to a lot of conferences, but I used to go to a lot of conferences, just represent the company, learn new things. I always loved sitting in all these seminars. Like I mentioned, I've seen Claudia West talk, probably half a dozen to 10 times. Yeah. I lost count, but it was every time I went somewhere and she was on the agenda, I went in her room because I know she was going to give me something new. I've seen Doug Talmy talk half a dozen plus times. I've seen so many people, even people I didn't know. Dwayne Estes was another one. I didn't know who he was when I walked in the room, but I sat down, I'm like, man, that guy knows what's going on, and he's someone we want to be involved with because he's pushing this objective further. Yeah, he's one of the people that's going to pick up that ball and take it as far as he possibly can. So I felt like I was pretty well rounded. But then you sit down and you get on the phone with Doug Talmy, with Claudia West, with Dwayne Estes, with Marcus Gray, with Sam Droege, with just about everyone with everyone we've had on, and they just kind of push what I thought I knew and take it 10 steps further because they're experts in that one facet.
Totally.
Where I've listened to them and I've dabbled in every part of it, but I didn't know everything, and they sit down and they don't tell us everything, but they take me way further than
and some of these people are people that we know. Claudia West, even though we saw her spoke, we worked at companies where we would speak to each other, but it tends to be more on a business level. We don't get to have these kind of conversations that we're having on the podcast with them, and you find out how much you don't even know about people that you know. Which is really interesting. We always try to portray everyone.
Kelly Gill was a great example of that.
She was fantastic.
I had no clue that she was an art major.
No, exactly. And it's you get to know everyone a little bit better, and it strengthens that bond. And I'm really thankful for all of that. So I think I like these cards.
Yeah, these are pretty neat. I had my doubts at first. I'm like, we are good at coming up with our own ideas, but
it was a nice thing that we probably wouldn't have brought up had we not done that. You want to incorporate them in future ones?
Yeah.
All right. So
keep doing it.
If anyone's interested, it's poddex.com, and it's Travis Brown, who does a lot of podcast lessons. So I'll give him a free plug because I think that definitely helped a little bit.
And here I was thinking you just misspelled poop deck.
No, Poddex. So I wanted to bring up one more thing before we close out. So we're closing in. We're like 55 minutes, 56 minutes.
We knew it was going to happen again.
That's okay. I'm good with an hour. At least it's not like 2 hours and we're still.
And it's right before a holiday. A lot of podcasts take off Friday.
Yes.
So you're going to have Friday. You're going to need things to listen to. Most of you probably aren't going into work. Or if you are going into work, then you definitely need something to listen to. So
yeah, totally. So I wanted to bring up. I started to try to bring this up during the Claudia West, but we were
running out of time.
We were running out of time, and you had to reel me in. I've been really off topic the last few episodes. So Tom's done a great job at reeling me in. But one of the things that was on the list that we didn't talk about, and it's off topic, that in a recent survey, New Jersey was ranked the most hated state in the U.S. And considering we're in New Jersey, I just wanted to bring that up to get your thoughts. You were born and grew up in New Jersey.
I grew up here, and I definitely felt that when I was going out of state. But I'll put it this way: I hate New Jersey too in a lot of parts, but not. It's what. So I went to college right when the Jersey Shore was coming out.
Okay, yeah.
So it was. You found out people found out you were from New Jersey and didn't really quite put together that why aren't you like these people who weren't actually from New Jersey, just vacationed in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And so yeah, what people, the perception of New Jersey, I don't like that either. I'm not.
Yeah.
And everyone in this area and south of New Jersey is not like that. There's definitely parts of New Jersey that are like that, where you get the loud, like the loud New Jersey accent and everything. But when I would go to places, people thought I was from. Apparently, I had like a southern accent. People thought I was from Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina. I
get that too, and I'm okay with people thinking this about New Jersey because it helps keep. It's already a populated state. Yeah. It keeps people away. But New Jersey, in a lot of respects, to me, is one large suburb, and it's like northern New Jersey is a suburb of New York, and southern New Jersey is a suburb of Philadelphia almost. But New Jersey, a lot of people that don't know the state think of the murder trifecta of the world. It's like they think Camden, Trenton, Newark. But New Jersey is so diverse, and I think we highlight that here. Yeah, you do have the whole coastal range. You have things like the Sourlands. You have Northwest, which is very rocky and mountainous. You have a lot of farmland where we're at, and it's flat. There's so many different areas of New Jersey to appreciate, and it's known as the Garden State for a reason. Yeah. So it's funny the impression of what a lot of people think of New Jersey that maybe haven't been here, because I don't think it's very accurate. Yeah. But like you said, there's parts of New Jersey that I'm definitely not a fan
I always
of.
like to describe it to people, my friends, when I was college or just someplace else. I always like to say, you know what, it's a place where I can do just about anything I want within an hour. Like outside, if I wanted to go downhill skiing, okay, I'm looking at an hour. Oh, I could probably find a place.
You could probably find it, yeah.
But it's like if you wanted to get decent downhill skiing, you're driving probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. But I can go to the beach. You can go to New York City. You can go to Philadelphia. You could do.
You can get to Baltimore in 2 hours. Yeah,
numerous malls. Right where we are, we're living in an agricultural area, so you have farms all over. So we can go and.
Burlington County,
go to different sand pits, and you have the Pine Barrens, you have the Highlands.
Yeah,
you have so many different ecosystems, so many different activities that are right here. Where when I used to live in upstate New York, it was you're in the mountains. It took me half an hour just to go to the grocery store.
Yeah,
to get to the grocery store, that was all you really had. You didn't have much else.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on a previous podcast. It might have been one of the earliest ones, but Burlington County, New Jersey, which is what we're in, and it's a very large county. Is number 4, at least at the time of the survey, was number 4 in the country for counties with produce directly to consumer. Yeah. So like farm markets, farm stands, that type of thing. And the top 3 were in California. So, I mean, that's pretty significant. That's a way of life for us here is the local farm market or farm stand. So I think it's pretty diverse, and I think it's pretty interesting that how many people took that survey that had never been to New Jersey. Yeah. They just picked New Jersey.
Oh, yeah. We definitely have a bad reputation on a national level because of our media. But we have a lot to offer. Yeah. And when people are allowed to travel, there's a lot to do here. So maybe think about coming to New Jersey. I like going to other places. Or not. You
can stay away. It is definitely congested in a lot of places. I will say that. And it's hard when you get close to one of those cities. You're definitely fighting congestion.
Yeah.
So it's what I'm trying to remember. How many is it? 8 million people in New Jersey.
About 8 million.
And square foot. I mean, you can drive from one end to the other in probably
from tip to tip. Like I think it's less than 4 hours for sure.
Yeah. So it's not a very big. You can get from the Delaware River to the beach in a little over an hour.
Yep.
So it's not very wide, not very big, but it's populated.
Yeah.
So we're over an hour. We should probably.
Yeah.
What do you think? Wrap up.
Yep. So that wraps it up. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you everyone for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
And oh wait, no, you don't say who you are yet. I'm like, did I forget to type something in? I'm totally out of it today. Wow. We're giving a big thank you to Stephen Marr for contributing our theme music, although we are still soliciting theme music for The Buzz.
That's right,
if you want to contribute new theme music for just the Buzz episodes, and I think we can probably do the same for the Roundtable episodes when we get there.
Yep.
But if you want to contribute theme music for The Buzz, you can send it to info@nativeplantshealthyplanet.com, and we'll pick a winner from that. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Also, thank you for the love on YouTube. The Buzz episodes have been really taking off a life of their own. We have the question and answer line. Thank you for calling in. Let's keep that going. We appreciate.
We want more calls from Saul.
Did we really?
I like the call from Saul.
You really don't know what you're what you're asking for. But you can call us at 215-346-6189, ask a question or leave a comment. And if we pick your question or comment, we'll play it and answer it on a future episode of The Buzz. And let's not forget the Facebook group. You guys have been really wonderful. And like anything else, there's lulls, but it's been picking back up again. So thank you. Keep it going over there.
Yeah. And one thing we keep forgetting to add in, is we have a Native Plants Healthy Planet Instagram as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where during the summer, I was doing a lot of sharing of events that were going on. There was some volunteer opportunities that I know Sourlands Conservancy had a bunch of volunteer opportunities, and they ended up fulfilling what they needed. I think they got more volunteers than they needed. But that was one of the things I was really doing over the summer, was trying to take those opportunities when I saw them and just share them through our stories so people could see them. Now it's been a little slower. We aren't posting as much, but we do have a Native Plants Healthy Planet Instagram as well. You can listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out at Apple Podcasts. We've been getting a ton of 5-star reviews, which I can't stress enough how much we appreciate those. They're that little bit that just makes you feel good and say, okay, we are doing the right thing, and want to keep it going.
Feedback is, and we say it all the time, like without feedback, you kind of feel like you're on an island. Yep. So it's nice just to know that people are enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah. So you can also listen on Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you consume your podcast. You can even ask Alexa to play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. Thanks, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you all next time. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.